Hi there, in this video we're going to be completing an engine oil service on this 2017 model Mazda CX-5, and it's running the 2-litre SkyActiv-G engine, so it's the KF series, and we're going to be installing this EZ oil drain valve. Now, as part of this engine oil service, we're going to be replacing the engine oil filter, and instead of the sump plug gasket, which we've got here, we're going to be swapping it out with this EZ oil drain valve. Now, this is the model EZ106, and it's appropriate for this particular vehicle. And it's essentially a ball valve which screws into your engine sump. So instead of using a sump plug and a sump plug gasket like what we've got here, we replace it with this instead. So there's less consumable parts for the future, and it also allows us to drain the oil fairly easily next time. Now, this is a 14mm thread, and we're just going to double check it with the actual sump plug. It's always good to double check it. Now, one of the other advantages with these EZ oil drain valves is because you're not going to be unscrewing the sump plug anymore, you minimize the chance of cross-threading or even stripping the threads of your oil sump. Now, because the EZ oil drain valve has its own O-ring, there's no need to use the sump plug gasket anymore. Now, from a cost perspective, the oil filter cost me about $23.51, and the EZ oil drain valve cost me around $36. And the engine oil cost me $39. Now, this was on special from $65. Now, the engine oil we're going to be using today is this Castrol Edge 10W30, and it's a full synthetic engine oil. Now, always check the owner's manual, because depending on the season and your ambient conditions, the engine oil spec may vary even for the same engine. Now, what I like to do before I actually drain the engine oil is allow the engine to run for about 5 minutes. That way we get the oil warm, not hot, warm, and that way it flows out of the engine easier. So we'll start up the engine, and we'll just let the engine run for about 5 minutes. And it's also a good time to check that your transmission is in park and that your handbrake is up. And don't forget to put some stoppers behind both rear wheels. Now remember, before you get under a vehicle, always use proper car stands. Never rely on the jack alone. And pop the hood. And what I also like to do is remove the engine oil fill cap, and that way the oil can flow easier when we go to drain it. Now, at the front of the vehicle on the right hand side is this cover plate. We have to remove that in order to get access to the sump plug and also the oil filter. So here is our engine oil filter, and here is the sump plug. So just from another view, here's our engine oil filter and our sump plug gasket that sits underneath that. So we'll remove the sump plug first, let the oil drain out, and then we'll remove the engine oil filter. Now, this step is quite messy, so I've just put some cardboard underneath the vehicle, and then we'll put our oil tray just over there. Now, to remove the actual sump plug, you'll need an 8mm hex bit like this. Now, temporarily, while the oil is almost finished draining out, I'm just going to put the original sump plug and gasket back in, and that way I don't get messy when it goes to undoing the oil filter. So I'll just leave that loose for now. So now we're just going to grab our new oil filter take the plastic off, and there is a bit of a light film on that O-ring, but still I just like to get some of the old engine oil and just put it across the face of that O-ring, and that way it allows it to not only seal better, but it also allows us to take it off easier next time as well. So now we're going to install this new engine oil filter, and this is where our oil filter goes. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a clean with a rag before we install the new one, like that. And now we're going to grab our new filter, which is here, and we're going to screw it in place. Now it's important that you don't force the screwing, otherwise you might strip or cross thread the filter. Alright, so we're just going to do it hand tight. There we go. Alright, so now that our engine oil filter is installed, we're going to remove our sump plug and gasket, and we're going to install the EZ oil drain valve. Alright, so on my left I have the engine oil sump plug and the gasket that suits, and on my right I've got the EZ oil drain valve. So I'm just going to check that the threading, and you can see the thread pitch matches, and the diameter is approximately the same, if not exactly the same. Yep. Alright, so we're just going to screw, instead of our oil sump plug and gasket, we're going to install this EZ oil drain valve instead. Now before we install our EZ oil drain valve, I'm just going to give this a wipe and a clean, and grab the valve. Make sure that the valve is closed, like that, in the closed position, and we're just going to screw that in place. And it's important you don't force it, and that way you don't cross thread anything. Now you don't want to over tighten, like that. Just give it another clean, and that way we know once the new engine oil is in if there's any leaks around the face of the valve. And to drain it, you just simply open the lever like that, and then when you're done, just close the lever once again. Now that'll just clear our cover plate, which is good, and there was no adapters required. So now that we've installed the EZ oil drain valve, it's time to put back this cover plate. Now before we attach the cover plate back on, just double check the oil filter and there's no leaks around the EZ oil drain valve, and make sure that the valve is in the closed position. So now it's time to fill the engine with oil, and I'm just in the owner's manual looking up the specs for the engine oil, and with oil filter replacement we're looking at 4.2 litres of engine oil. Alright, so now that the engine oil is settled, we'll just check the level with the dipstick. And it's a good idea to give it a wipe before we take our final reading. So you can see now the engine oil is between, in fact probably a little bit over the top fill hole there. So that should be enough engine oil. By the time it settles and goes through all the oil galleries, that'll be fine. And just screw our oil fill plug back in. Like that. We're just going to start up the engine and make sure that oil goes throughout the whole engine, and make sure that there's no leaks as well underneath the vehicle. So now that we've had the engine running for a bit, I'm just going to do one final check on the engine oil level. And you can see that that's probably a little bit over, so I might have to just take out a bit of oil. So there you have it. That's how you can successfully change the engine oil filter, and fit an EZ oil drain valve in your Mazda CX-5. I hope you found this video informative. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.